Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has officially launched Operation Lion's Courage, a military campaign aimed at destroying Iran's nuclear enrichment and weaponization infrastructure. According to Netanyahu and his top military commanders, this operation is expected to last several weeks. A significant component of the offensive has been designed to eliminate key figures in Iran's military and defense industrial leadership, particularly those involved in the country's nuclear development efforts. Israel has stated that it recently acquired new intelligence indicating that Iran was on the verge of achieving nuclear weapons capability, prompting this decisive action. This revelation, Israel asserts, justified immediate strikes, despite the ongoing diplomatic efforts by the United States to reach a negotiated agreement with Iran over its nuclear program, one that would allow uranium enrichment under international oversight while alleviating fears of weapons development. While more information about the full scope of the Israeli attacks is expected to emerge, initial reports indicate that, in addition to targeted assassinations, Israeli forces struck multiple critical infrastructure sites. These include air defense systems and communication networks, uranium enrichment facilities at Natanz and Firdos, ballistic missile production centers at Parchin, a ballistic missile operations base in Piranshar, additional military-industrial targets linked to the nuclear program. In recent months, Iran has positioned itself as a nuclear threshold state. As a signatory of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, Iran retains the right to enrich uranium for peaceful purposes under International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, oversight. However, it is prohibited from developing nuclear weapons while remaining a signatory. Iran's stockpile of uranium enriched to 60%, which has no civilian application consistent with its declared nuclear activities, was viewed by many experts as a strategic move to place Iran within one enrichment cycle of producing 92% weapons-grade uranium. Iran has also been installing advanced IR-6 centrifuge cascades at the fortified Firdos enrichment site. These machines are exponentially more efficient and capable of transforming Iran's existing 60% enriched uranium into weapons-grade material within days, potentially yielding enough fissile matter for 3 to 5 nuclear warheads. Over the past decade, Iran's defense industry has developed the necessary technologies for producing a nuclear warhead, including advanced electronic systems and heat-resistant materials needed for re-entry at hypersonic speeds, essential elements of a deliverable nuclear device. Merely building a fission bomb is not sufficient. A state must be able to deliver it with accuracy and reliability. Until recently, Iran's progress toward nuclear weapons was tempered by a religious edict, fatwa, issued by Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei, which deemed nuclear arms incompatible with Islamic principles. However, this religious constraint has been increasingly questioned, as influential Iranian political figures and advisors have signaled the possibility of reversing the fatwa in the face of existential threats posed by a nuclear-armed Israel. Consequently, Iran is now effectively a nuclear threshold state. Israel's ongoing operation underlines that this status will not be tolerated. The proverbial escalation genie is now out of the bottle. Iran now faces a pivotal use it or lose it, a decision. Rapidly convert its threshold nuclear capabilities into fully operational weapons or risk losing them to continued Israeli strikes. Iran has previously warned that any attack on its nuclear facilities would prompt withdrawal from the NPT. Now, that threat may be tested. Should Iran fail to follow through, it could be perceived domestically and internationally as an act of weakness, potentially triggering internal instability or even regime change. The key strategic question is whether Israel's strikes have inflicted sufficient damage to permanently derail Iran's nuclear ambitions. Israel appears to be deliberately provoking Iran into abandoning the NPT and openly pursuing nuclear weapons. Such a move would compel broader international involvement, particularly from the United States, and European powers like the UK, France, and Germany. who have clearly stated that Iran will not be allowed to acquire nuclear arms. Notably, Israel is not relying solely on physical destruction of Iran's underground enrichment facilities, which are heavily fortified and likely beyond the reach of conventional munitions. Instead, it has focused on targeted killings of top military and scientific leaders, demolishing critical manufacturing infrastructure for nuclear weapons components and missile delivery systems. This approach is meant to sow disruption and delay. Israel struck now, rather than waiting another week, because Iran was on the brink of assembling its dispersed nuclear activities into a coherent, resilient weapons program. It is believed that Israel has already killed many of the high-level Iranian officials who would have led such an effort. Iran must now recover technically while simultaneously preparing a political justification for establishing a formal nuclear weapons program. If Israel's goals have been met, Iran will need time to recover, a luxury it may not have. Tehran has promised massive retaliation not only against Israel, but also against any nation that supported Israel's strike on its nuclear infrastructure. Should Iran fail to retaliate, whether due to insufficient capability or political indecision, it may open a diplomatic window that could cement Israel's gains. Such a scenario could lead to a ceasefire, international inspections of Iran's facilities, and a major strategic victory for Israel, a devastating setback for Iran. Alternatively, if Iran decides to develop nuclear weapons in response, it will likely provoke full-scale military intervention by both the United States and Europe, possibly part of Israel's calculated strategy from the start. While former U.S. President Donald Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio have publicly tried to distance themselves from the Israeli assault, prominent figures such as Senator Lindsey Graham have voiced strong support for the Israeli military action. In truth, the U.S. gave Israel tacit approval for the strikes, shaping a diplomatic and geopolitical environment in which the operation could be justified. The United States helped rally Gulf Arab states against Iran and supported IAEA resolutions that accused Tehran of violating NPT safeguards. Simultaneously, the U.S. kept Iran engaged in fruitless nuclear negotiations, which allowed intelligence services to gather data and identify targets for Israel. Current reports suggest that Iran may declare war on Israel. Such a declaration would transform this crisis into a full-blown existential conflict between two long-standing enemies: Israel, portrayed in the U.S. as a trusted ally, and Iran, viewed since 1979 as an implacable foe. There is no doubt the United States will side with Israel, meaning American military involvement is inevitable. This conflict could escalate into an effort to deliver a strategic defeat to Iran, a euphemism for regime change. Iran had only one viable path to prevent this outcome: negotiate a new nuclear agreement with the U.S. that would verifiably eliminate its threshold status. Instead, Iran allowed the process to drag on, becoming ensnared in negotiations never intended to succeed, but rather to buy time for Israel's crippling first strike. Now, Iran's survival hinges on one final chance. The world must understand: Iran will never be allowed to possess a nuclear weapon. Should it attempt to do so now, it faces the risk of complete destruction. Yet, the solution must not come through external military intervention alone. Rather, Iran must retaliate against Israel in a way that is so forceful and decisive, it forces Israel to appeal to the U.S. for a negotiated ceasefire. Such an agreement must reintegrate Iran's nuclear program within the NPT framework under international oversight. Is this outcome possible? Yes, but only if Iran inflicts devastating retaliatory blows against Israel. Anything less, and the Islamic Republic of Iran may not survive. The long-threatened True Promise 3 ballistic missile strike on Israel must now be executed with precision and resolve. Failure will mark the end of Iran as we know it.